Hey everyone, welcome to the next episode of Outcomes. I'm your host, Barrett King, and with me today is Eleanor. She is the founder and principal consultant at Branchworks, and I'm going to have her explain what that is in a minute. We've known each other for quite some time now. Actually, we're talking earlier about a really interesting thing that, well, I won't spoil the surprise. So first off, my friend, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. And so actually, just so the listeners understand, what do you do at Branchworks? What's the business?
Yeah, so Branchworks is a consultancy that is specialized in partnerships, and we help technology companies to recruit, activate, and scale partnerships and ultimately make more revenue.
I love it. All the right things. And specifically, what we were talking about before was the idea of activation. I'm going to ask the primary question I start off with first, though, which is, what does partnerships mean to you? And you said it's a collaboration of two or more parties sharing knowledge, having fun, and generating revenue together. It sounds like the perfect scenario in your case. Would you change it? Would you add to it? The floor is yours.
No, I don't think I would change it. I think the important thing for me is the combination of all of those things. Like, you can't just knowledge share, you can't just have fun, and there can't be just a focus on revenue. For me, it's a combination of all three that make a really good partnership. So whenever I am starting partnerships or managing partnerships, I really put emphasis on all three areas.
I like that it's a combination, this sort of synergistic relationship, because I think it's super easy to focus. I just actually talked to a guest the other day about this. It's easy for, in particular, leaders that are building new programs to talk about single dimension. Like, we're here to make money. We're here to, and sometimes it's the right focus. We're here to help the customer, right? But if it's single and it's not multidimensional, I think you do miss out on the ancillary things that sit around that topic at hand. And you mentioned, obviously, the idea of this kind of mutual relationship, and more specifically, the early activation of the partnership. So how do you, to set the stage, let's talk about that today. How do you, initially describe activation for the listener?
Yeah. So for me, that early part, before even a contract is signed, is one of the most important parts of a partnership, if not the most important part. I think, I've definitely been someone that's done this in the past, early on in my career, for sure. You identify your ideal partners. You're like, right, we want to go to market with these sets of partners. And then you start reaching out to them and they come back to you and they're like, yeah, we'll have a conversation. You think, great. And you kind of rush to that contract signature and think that you'll just do everything after. You're like, quite quick, let's get them signed. We want them on board. We want them a partner, want to get their logos, and then we'll figure it all out after. And I was so focused on getting a lot of partners in the past that I didn't stop to actually set expectations and have a conversation about what partnership meant. And that is something that I learned very quickly, and now will focus my attention on that really seriously early doors. It's really important for me, for us to sit down and talk about what partnership means to you, what you expect from a partner, how you want to work with a partner, how you like to communicate. One of the questions I always ask new partners before a contract is signed is, what kind of partner do you want to be? How do you want me? Yeah. And how do you want me to interact with you? What kind of communication do you want? Do you want to be the type of partner that, I check in with once a quarter and I update you, I include you on the newsletter and you get information here and there? If you do, cool. I will check in once a quarter. You have my commitment and I will do that. Or do you want to be a partner that, maybe we speak a little bit more regularly? Maybe we talk about doing a joint event here and there and we have, a kind of nice flow of deals back and forth, but you're not kind of firing right to the top? Or do you want to be a partner that I am speaking to every other day? We're on WhatsApp, we're on Slack. I know your children's names. I send you Christmas presents. Is that the kind of partnership you want? And if so, great, I am all in. But this is the kind of performance that I would expect us to have together. This is the kind of revenue I would expect us to generate together, the types of events I want us to do together, the types of communication that I would love us to get to. If that's where you want to go, great. But let's have that conversation beforehand rather than just signing an agreement and being on different pages about what partnership means.
Yeah, the expectation thing it's a great call out, because I think it's easy to go in with your own framework. We're going to do this and they're going to do that and we're all going to win together. And, to your point, hang out at Christmas time and bubblegum and raindrops and all those good things. I'm actually curious, how much do you think then that dynamic, especially the early days, right? How much of it is in the partner's control versus yours? How much are you setting the stage for your own expectation, or the language you used, you're going to the partner and saying, what do you want? And then sort of giving, if you will, like the tug of war almost, giving to them first, and then over time, perhaps trying to incrementally move them back in your direction.
Yeah. So for me, the question is, what type of partner do you see yourselves being for us? And what does that look like for you? And then I'll normally place the expectation back. It's if this is where you want to be, if you want to be that like top partner that I am paying a ton of attention to and putting a lot of time and resource into, this is where I would expect that kind of partnership to be at. And this is what I'm going to need from you in return. Or do you want to be in that other bucket? And this is the kind of, revenue I would expect us to generate together, or activity. And it's very much, once I understand what kind of partnership they be, then I go back with the expectation of what I would want to see from them in return.
Yep. So once you have that baseline, then what are some of the first activities that you focus on, right? So what I'm picturing, like I've talked to some partner leaders in the past, and I myself have done this, where, we build a mutual action plan, and that plan, it talks about 1 year, 3 year, 5 year goal. It talks about KPIs. It talks about, perhaps investments in terms of, to your point earlier, events or team members need to be hired or developed, et cetera. How much of it is, you believe, that like foundational written plan versus the verbal? Like, I'm curious how you plan out and structure, in your experience, some of those early expectation setting exercises.
Yeah, the mutual action plan is something that I love, and is something that I will always put in place with partners, especially if they want to be in that kind of top end. And then it's really about consistency and about doing the things that you said you were going to do. I think it's all well and good putting these things into a mutual action plan and having a conversation and putting it down in writing. But if that document is never revisited and it's kind of filed away in a Google Drive that no one ever looks at, and you've kind of made all these commitments and then no one follows through on them, like, it's not going to work. You're not going to reach those 1, 2, 5 year goals that you set in that document. It has to be something that is revisited. So for me, it doesn't really matter where we've put it, in what format we have agreed it, but we each have to show up and do the things that we say we're going to do. If we say we're going to talk every other week, if we say we're going to talk every week, every month, then we're going to do that. If we commit to generating a certain amount of leads or webinars or whatever it is together, then we do that. We show up for the things that we said we were going to do, because that's what we put in place. And if we need to change it, let's have a conversation about it. Yeah,
then you adapt. It's funny, as you were saying that, maybe not funny, but interesting. I was taking mutual action plan and making it mutual accountability plan in my head, just because I think what you're describing is more so the statements that you make early on are valuable, because it sets expectation and framework for how you two will work together, operate, and then certainly the outcomes you're looking for. But more specifically, it's how do we then achieve it? How do we hold each other accountable to it? How do we, in some ways, perhaps police the outcome of that result and ensure that it gets both of us the value that we want? In that timeline, then, as you're building out early expectations, activation, et cetera, you're probably meeting quarterly or daily, weekly, monthly, whatever it is. How much then are you reliant on, because we're thinking early here, right? Like early program, first, I don't know, maybe 500 partners, 100 partners or whatever. How much of it is both of you building that? It's like that expression, building the plane as you fly it sort of thing, right? Like, because it is, right? You are starting from scratch. You're trying to develop something together. So how do you look for the profile of partner then that is willing to action early on without everything being done, right? I'm picturing that, like, those first partners kind of frame this thing out, and they're saying yes because they see the opportunity, but now you have to set an expectation of, and oh, by the way, like, we don't have the bus. We have to build the bus, but we drive down the road together. Is there anything that you've seen work really well in that expectation setting timeline and that framework you're describing to ensure that the partners that are saying yes are of the type that will then contribute with you and be willing to work together?
Yeah, I think a lot of the work that I've done has been in the data space and working with consultancies and SIs. I've seen it work really, really well when they have at least one person focused on sales, especially if we're talking about revenue generation. Someone that understands that journey has been really important and really successful in my experience. Can be successful without it, but I always think it's great to have those people in place.
Yeah. All right. So we're looking for somebody who's done that part of the work.